Welcome to ABTop, where every infidelity story not only brings deep emotions but also unveils interesting and fascinating secrets. Let's explore the multidimensional aspects of love and betrayal. When she suggested an open marriage, I didn't hesitate to agree. But what I did after that truly changed everything. Are you curious? This story isn't about what you think it is. If you find it interesting, please like it. If not, please comment number 1. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this video. Khloe Williams, a 28-year-old librarian with a deep love for books, had always imagined her life unfolding like the pages of a well-written novel, full of passion, loyalty, and a steady rhythm of contentment. She was engaged to Ethan Carter, a 31-year-old lawyer who had captured her heart in the most unexpected of ways. They had met 3 years ago at the downtown library where she worked. Ethan had come in, suited and serious, looking for a legal text for a case he was working on. Their first conversation sparked an instant connection, and soon enough, their casual meetings evolved into something much deeper. Khloe had never felt more secure. Ethan was everything she had ever wanted in a partner, kind, responsible, and deeply supportive of her ambitions. They were set to be married in just 6 months, and life, by all accounts, seemed perfect. Their friends would often comment on how they were the ideal couple, grounded, balanced, and deeply in love. Khloe herself had no doubts, or at least, she hadn't until recently. It started subtly, at first, just casual remarks from her closest friend, Emily. Emily had always been more adventurous, the type of person who thrived on spontaneity and excitement. One evening, over a glass of wine, Emily brought up the concept of an open relationship, framing it as a way to maintain the excitement and long-term commitments. "You know, it doesn't have to mean you don't love each other," Emily had said, her voice light but firm. "It's about trust, freedom, and exploration." Khloe had brushed off the idea at first, thinking it was something that would never fit into a relationship with Ethan. They had always been traditional, committed to one another with a sense of clarity and purpose. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and over time, Emily's words began to creep into Khloe's thoughts. She found herself wondering if maybe there was some truth to the idea. After all, marriages sometimes grew stale, and perhaps exploring new experiences could prevent that. She wasn't sure how to feel about it, but her curiosity grew. Emily's suggestions became more frequent, and soon enough, Khloe started to believe that maybe, just maybe, an open relationship was a way to strengthen her bond with Ethan by removing any lingering boundaries. Her friends had framed it as liberating, a way to explore new possibilities without losing what they had. As Khloe sat on the couch one evening, anxiously twirling her engagement ring, she realized she couldn't ignore the idea anymore. She knew she had to bring it up to Ethan, even though her heart pounded with uncertainty. She told herself it was about trust and freedom, but deep down, she feared what his reaction might be. The weight of her decision bore down on her as she prepared herself to have the conversation that could change everything. That evening, Khloe sat on the couch, her hands trembling slightly as she rehearsed the words in her mind. She had spent the past week working up the courage to bring up the idea to Ethan. The two of them had always been open and honest with each other, and Khloe convinced herself that this would be no different. It was just another conversation, about trust, about growth. But something about it felt heavier, as if she was standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure of what awaited her on the other side. Ethan was in the kitchen, casually preparing dinner. The soft clinking of silverware and the comforting smell of sautéed garlic filled the air, making everything feel deceptively normal. Khloe swallowed hard and called out to him. "Ethan, can we talk for a second?" He turned, smiling as he wiped his hands on a towel, clearly not expecting anything serious. "Sure, what's up?" Khloe hesitated, suddenly aware of the weight of what she was about to say. Her pulse quickened. She glanced down at her hands, fiddling with her engagement ring, before finally meeting his eyes. "I've been thinking about something. I've talked to Emily and some of the girls, and they brought up an idea that I think we should consider." Ethan raised an eyebrow, intrigued but not yet alarmed. "Okay, what's on your mind?" Khloe took a deep breath, her voice a little shaky. What do you think about the idea of an open relationship? The words hung in the air, the silence that followed deafening. Ethan stood there, towel still in hand, his expression frozen in place. He blinked, clearly taken aback, and for a moment, Khloe wondered if he hadn't heard her correctly. "What?" he finally asked, his voice quieter than usual, as if trying to process her words. Khloe's stomach twisted. "I mean, an open relationship. It's not about us not being enough for each other," she rushed to explain, her words tumbling out faster now. "It's about freedom, you know? Trusting each other enough to explore new things but still come back to each other. I think it could strengthen us." Ethan's face remained unreadable, his silence growing heavier with each passing second. Khloe felt her heart racing, anxiety gnawing at her. She had imagined this conversation going differently, with Ethan calmly discussing the idea, maybe even agreeing to explore it. But the longer he stood there, the more unsure she became. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Ethan exhaled sharply and put the towel down. His expression was a mix of disbelief and hurt, though he tried to mask it. "I need to think about this," he said, his voice tight. Without another word, he grabbed his jacket from the chair and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" Khloe called after him, her voice laced with desperation. "To meet Ryan," Ethan replied curtly, not turning around as he walked out the door, leaving Khloe standing there, her mind spinning. Ethan walked into the bar, the low hum of conversation and clinking glasses doing little to soothe the turmoil in his mind. He spotted Ryan at their usual table in the corner, already halfway through a beer. Ethan slid into the seat across from him, still feeling the weight of Khloe's words hanging over him. Ryan looked up, instantly sensing something was off. "You look like you've seen a ghost, man. What's going on?" Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair before speaking. "Khloe brought up something tonight, something I wasn't expecting." He paused, unsure of how to even begin. Ryan leaned forward, concerned. "What do you mean? What did she say?" Ethan hesitated, still grappling with the shock of it all. "She asked me if I'd consider an open relationship." Ryan nearly choked on his beer. "What? Are you serious?" Ethan nodded, his expression serious. "Yeah. She says it's about trust and freedom, that it could make us stronger. But I don't know, man. It feels wrong." Ryan shook his head in disbelief. "An open relationship? Dude, that's a red flag. Is she seeing someone else? Why would she even suggest something like that if everything's going well between you two?" Ethan frowned, the question gnawing at him. "I don't know. She says it's not about that, that it's just about exploring new things, but," his voice trailed off as he stared at the table, his thoughts spiraling. "What if she's already thinking about someone else? What if she's not happy with me?" Ryan leaned back in his chair, his face serious. "Listen, man. I don't know Khloe like you do, but this doesn't sound right. You two have always been solid. Why would she suddenly want to change things up? You need to figure out where this is coming from." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of Ryan's words. His mind flashed back to the past few weeks, wondering if he had missed any signs. Had Khloe been pulling away from him? Had he been too caught up in work to notice? The doubt was creeping in now, clouding everything. Meanwhile, back at home, Khloe sat with her friends, Emily and another close friend, Jennifer. They were laughing and chatting, but Khloe couldn't shake the unease that settled in her stomach. She had expected Ethan to react differently, to at least consider the idea, but his silence had spoken volumes. Still, Emily and Jennifer assured her she had done the right thing. "You're just opening up new possibilities," Emily said, smiling. "It's better to talk about it now than let things get stale." Khloe nodded, trying to convince herself that she was making the right choice. But deep down, a nagging voice told her that she might have just set something in motion that she couldn't take back. The next day, Khloe knew she couldn't avoid the conversation any longer. She had spent the night tossing and turning, her mind racing over Ethan's reaction. She needed to talk to him again, to explain her point of view more clearly and, hopefully, reach some kind of understanding. Maybe she hadn't presented it in the best way last night. Maybe he just needed more time to see that this was about trust and freedom, not rejection. When Ethan came home from work, Khloe gathered her courage and approached him. "Can we talk?" she asked softly, her heart pounding in her chest. Ethan looked at her, his expression neutral, which unnerved her even more. He nodded, and they sat down on the couch, the same place where this conversation had begun. Khloe took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot about what I said," she began. "And I really believe that this could be good for us. It's not about replacing each other or losing what we have. It's about freedom, excitement, and trust. We'd still be committed to each other, but it would take away some of the boundaries. Doesn't that sound like something that could strengthen us?" Ethan was silent for a moment, his eyes fixed on her. Then, to Khloe's surprise, he gave a small, bitter laugh. "You really believe that, huh?" Khloe blinked, confused. "Yes. I mean, I thought we could explore this together." Ethan leaned back, his expression cold. "All right," he said, his tone laced with sarcasm. "Let's do it. No limits, no restrictions. We can see whoever we want, whenever we want. How's that for freedom?" Khloe's stomach dropped. This wasn't what she had meant at all. "Ethan, that's not." "That's exactly what you're asking for," he interrupted. "You want freedom? Fine. I'll call someone right now, set up a date. Let's see how that works for us." Khloe felt a rush of panic. "Wait, no, Ethan, I don't think." Ethan had already pulled out his phone, scrolling through his contacts. "There's a woman I know from work. She's been interested for a while. I'm sure she'd love to go out with me." Tears welled up in Khloe's eyes. This wasn't what she wanted at all. "Please, Ethan, don't." But he was already typing a message. Too late. You wanted an open relationship. Now we've got one. Khloe couldn't hold back her tears any longer. She collapsed into sobs, realizing with a crushing certainty that she didn't want this. She had made a terrible mistake. But it was too late. Ethan had taken her words to their extreme, and now their relationship was unraveling before her eyes. Ethan stood up, phone in hand, as Khloe continued to cry. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the door, his expression unreadable. "I'm going out," he said flatly, his voice devoid of emotion. Khloe's sobs intensified. "Ethan, please don't do this." He paused at the door, his hand on the knob. "I'm just giving you what you wanted, Khloe. This is what you asked for." Without waiting for a response, he opened the door and walked out, leaving Khloe alone in the quiet, empty house. Hours passed, but Ethan didn't return. Khloe sat on the couch, her thoughts a tangled mess of regret, fear, and self-recrimination. She had wanted to open the door to more freedom, but instead, she had pushed Ethan away. Her phone buzzed with messages from Emily and Jennifer, but Khloe ignored them. Their encouragement, which had seemed so empowering just days ago, now felt hollow and misguided. When Ethan finally returned, it was well past midnight. Khloe's eyes were swollen from crying, but she sat up when she heard the door open. Ethan walked in, his face tired but calm. He didn't look like a man who had just gone on a date, but he didn't offer any explanations, either. "Did you?" Khloe began, her voice trembling, but she couldn't finish the sentence. "No," Ethan replied shortly, his expression still distant. "I didn't go on the date. I went to my parents' house to clear my head." Khloe felt a slight wave of relief, but it didn't last long. The damage was already done, and she knew that things weren't simply going to go back to how they were. The next morning, Khloe's family arrived unexpectedly. Her brother, Matt, stormed into the house, his face red with anger. "Where is he?" Matt demanded, his voice shaking with fury. "How dare he cheat on you?" Khloe, still in a fragile state, tried to calm him down. "Matt, please, it's not what you think." But Matt wasn't listening. He was ready to confront Ethan, convinced that his sister had been wronged. When Ethan came downstairs, he stood his ground, his face impassive as Matt hurled accusations at him. "You think you can just walk out on Khloe and cheat on her? After everything she's done for you?" Matt shouted. Ethan sighed, looking exhausted. "You don't know the full story, Matt. Khloe's the one who suggested an open relationship. I didn't cheat. I didn't even go on the date. But she's the one who wanted this." Matt froze, his anger replaced with shock as he turned to Khloe for confirmation. Khloe, tears streaming down her face, nodded silently. The room fell into an awkward, painful silence, her family now grappling with the revelation of Khloe's involvement and the unraveling of her engagement. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the house grew colder, more distant. Ethan avoided Khloe, speaking only when necessary, and Khloe was left to grapple with the full weight of her choices. She replayed the conversation over and over in her mind, unable to shake the regret that clung to her like a heavy fog. What had once seemed like a bold, progressive idea now felt like a foolish, reckless mistake that had cost her the one person she loved most. Ethan had made up his mind. The trust between them had been shattered, and there was no way to repair the damage. He had always believed in loyalty and commitment, and while he tried to understand Khloe's perspective, he couldn't move past the betrayal he felt. For Ethan, the idea of an open relationship had revealed a crack in the foundation of what they had built together, one that he wasn't willing to overlook. One evening, as they sat in the living room in heavy silence, Ethan finally broke it. "I think it's best if we end this," he said quietly, his voice steady but filled with finality. "We're not the same people we were when we met, Khloe. And I don't think we can fix this." Khloe's heart sank, the words she had feared for days finally spoken aloud. She wanted to fight, to argue, but deep down, she knew Ethan was right. The bond they had shared was broken, and no amount of talking could bring back the trust they had lost. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I never meant for this to happen." Ethan gave a small, sad smile. "I know. But it did." The next few weeks were a blur for Khloe. Ethan moved out of the apartment, taking with him the life they had planned together. Their engagement was officially over, and as Ethan began to move on, finding solace in new hobbies and reconnecting with old friends, Khloe found herself spiraling. She quit her job at the library, unable to focus or find joy in the things that had once made her happy. Her friends, who had once encouraged her to explore new possibilities, now seemed distant, unsure of how to support her. Khloe felt isolated, consumed by the regret of her actions. She spent most days in the apartment, surrounded by the remnants of a life that had slipped through her fingers. Ethan, meanwhile, thrived in his new freedom. He threw himself into work, traveled, and slowly began to rediscover what he wanted from life, without Khloe. While the pain of their breakup still lingered, he felt a sense of clarity and relief that came with letting go of a relationship that no longer served him. For Khloe, the resolution was less clear. She was left to pick up the pieces, haunted by the realization that she had let external influences guide her into making a choice that destroyed the future she had so carefully planned. And though she knew deep down that there was no going back, the weight of her regret would remain with her for a long time. Thank you for reading this story. See you in a new and better story.